Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Um, Thank you for coming to another Pathfinder event, the Pakistan Lunch. And Imran has scored a hat trick. This is his third appearance in a row. I'm going to keep my remarks short, but I would like to, before I request Sushant to say a few words from the World Economic Forum side, I'd just like to thank all those who come regularly. I'd like to particularly remember somebody who's not here at the moment. I had a heart condition, Princess Jeet and Nand. Princess Jeet is not here. I hope Uday is here, but probably he's not. But other than that, my regulars, Rati and Drew, and of course, Firoza and Yamshid, and Rahul is always here, you know. Now, I would like to just recognize the Pakistanis who are here, who make a difference in the World Economic Forum, particularly titan of our industry, Hussain Daud. Then, of course, Zakir Mahmood is here, Habib Bank, and Atif Bukhari for the first time, president of UBL. Please, if you just stand up and be recognized so that people can just see you. Yes, see you. Hussain Bhai, and of course, Zakir is right there at the back. And we have Shameen Ubaid, who of course we take great pride in. Shameen is sitting somewhere there. And of course we have Sanya Nishtar. She is, where is she? There she is, right. Other than that, of course somebody I called infant terrible of Pakistan's, this thing of course he doesn't stay in Pakistan, Arif Naqvi, which we are very proud of, Arif. And mashallah done very well this year, rather last year, and hopefully this year will be as big. Thank you all for coming, and we are going through very tumultuous times, and tumultuous times can only be confronted with good leadership. And unfortunately in Pakistan we have tremendous resource. If I would count the human resource, that would go into millions. But even if you look at the material resources, the second largest copper and gold reserves in the world, the third largest gold reserves in the world, the fourth largest cotton industry in the world, the fifth largest milk producing country in the world, the sixth largest rice producing country in the world, the seventh largest wheat producing country in the world, the seventh largest wheat producing country in the world. And of course, we are a nuclear power and have the means to protect ourselves. We have designs on nobody, but we've had very bad leadership for decades. And in between, we've had leaders who've had shown promise. And I particularly look up to Imran because Imran represents the hope that for the future for Pakistan. And I'm going to request Imran to be candid and forthright because this is a make or break year for Pakistan. Believe it. If this year we do not succeed in installing a good leadership, then even I, perennial optimist that I am, feel that there is no hope for us. So this is a make or break year for us. And a leader, like people are known, a leader must gather a good team around him. And I think that would be the greatest challenge that Imran would face, to acquire that good team to take him forward. A leader is defined by the aides that surround him. Like people say that you are defined by the company you keep. A leader is defined by the aides that surround him. With that, the only other thing I would like to mention is I'm grateful to Imran that despite the fact that there were a lot of compulsions for you not to come, you broke off at this time, at this critical time, and thought it important enough that you should address this audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Ikram, and I'll also keep my words short because I think the numbers in the room speak for themselves in terms of the enthusiasm and excitement one has once again, the third year in a row, to hear Imran Khan's vision for Pakistan and how we will transform Pakistan. Before I do that, I would, however, on behalf of the forum, also like to congratulate you on the recent publication of your new book, Escape from Oblivion. Having sat in your office in Karachi and seen that photo collage, it's wonderful to see now those many stories now put onto paper, and I think it's a wonderful narrative which you can pick up here. And on behalf of the Managing Board and Professor Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum, we'd like to extend our appreciation, Imran, that you've come again this year under difficult circumstances. And I would say one needn't list so many achievements that you've had, but really in one statement one could say that what will forever have a lasting impact on Pakistan is the way in which you have opened politics to a wide range of new voices, to new generations, and given people hope that there can be change, and really mobilized people behind you to change mindsets and who really care about the issues about which you are so passionate. So with that, we're very keen to hear your remarks, and thank you again for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, Sushant. Ikram, thank you very much for making me do this hat trick. I want to thank everyone who's here. Some of the usual suspects, like Parmesh, but a lot of other people, and I think it's because it shows that people are concerned about Pakistan and they really want to know which way the country is going. And plus, there is a lot of confusion about Pakistan and Pakistanis. And so the reason why I came here, it's a very difficult time to leave Pakistan right now because every day it's like reading a novel like Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's every day there's a new adventure. You wake up in the morning and you read the newspaper and you think, where do I start now? Which statement to give about this crisis or this and so on and so on. So it is facing multi-crises right now. But here is someone who's more optimistic than ever. I think that Pakistan right now is so ready for change. The people of Pakistan have already decided for a change. The elections will reflect what I'm talking about. Now there's this battle, epic battle that is going to take place between what is the status quo. Political classes, a mixture of maybe some bureaucrats, political classes, and for the first time, I do not think the army. Normally, army would also be part of a status quo which wants to preserve a system. But this is the first time, and I will elaborate later on, that the army is not part of the status quo which wants to preserve this crumbling system. There is a political class which has a vested interest now to stop this big process of change that's taking place. And there is this young population of Pakistan. 40 million Pakistanis will vote for the first time in the history. Out of a total registered vote bank of 90 million, 40 million will vote for the first time. So this is the big vote for change. This is the engine of change which is very visible. And I'll come back to recently what you saw, the long march in Islamabad. It was fueled by this youth population. So the status quo is shakier than it's ever been before. And they are closing ranks. There is tacit understanding amongst them to stop this process of change. Huge amount of money is flowing into the media. And the media, this money is flowing to somehow tell the people that actually whoever talks about change is either a fraud or a fake, or they're trying to pick holes in them. For instance, I'll just give you an example. All the major political parties have been in power for the last 5 years. The only party that has been out of power is Tehreek-e-Insaf. But in the last 1 year, if you look at the media, the criticism of Tehreek-e-Insaf, all the political parties combined who are in power, and Pakistan is going through the worst period in its history, according to the Pakistan Economic Survey, never has the condition of Pakistanis been so bad. But if you look at the media, all the parties put together who are sitting in power are criticized less than the one party which is sitting outside Tehreek-e-Insaf. So we faced amazing amount of criticism. First, they were saying, you don't have enough electables, so you can't win an election, so you're irrelevant. Then we had the tsunami, 30th October 2011, and there was a tsunami within the party of these electables rushing to join us. Then when we turned out to be a different sort of a party, which decided that first it will hold, for the first time in our history, a political party will hold intra-party elections. It's never happened before in Pakistan. So all the other parties, I don't really call them political parties, they are family limited companies. I often ask them, I said, at least hold elections within the family. I mean, at least that would be a bit more democratic. So if you look at them in the last 20 years, the quality of people running the parties has actually degenerated. 20 years ago, the cabinets were much better than they are right now, because their children have taken over. It's like in a family business, the father is training the children to take over from him. So it's exactly what's happening. You have what was considered the most democratic political party, People's Party. A teenager, the son of Benazir Bhutto, his name is changed from Zardari, surname is changed from Zardari to Bhutto, and he inherits a political party at the age of 18. He becomes a co-chairperson of a party. This is even worse than monarchy, because I think Prince Charles probably got more training of how to handle governance than an 18-year-old boy who still is studying. So, on the other hand, the other Sharif family, which is runs the other big political party, the son of one brother and the daughter of the other brother are already now prime ministers in waiting. So compared to them, this is the first time we decided, and I'll just give you a brief history. We struggled for 15 years, and suddenly we had this rally in Karachi, in Lahore, and then in Karachi, where almost over 250,000 people turned up, which hasn't happened in Pakistan since 40 years. And people they came to a rally. People are brought to big rallies. Here people walk to the rally. And that's what changed Pakistan. But we now had the option. We had this power, street power, to actually do what recently Dr. Tahir al-Qadri has done. He took this long march to Islamabad. We had the power actually and we were under a lot of pressure. People were sick of the government, that why don't you march to Islamabad and try and topple the government. But we decided that first we must put our own house in order. And in order to do that, the party must hold intra-party elections. So we opened membership, and we thought we'd have a membership of 2 to 3 million members. It turned out we had a membership of 10 million people. Now, what we thought was, to hold elections and have an elected party. But to hold elections for 10 million people in a party turned out to be one of the biggest challenges we ever faced. To have a voters list. How do you have a voters list? You need the Pakistan Election Commission, just to give you an idea, has billions of rupees of budget. It has the whole government machinery, and it tries to have a voters list of 80 million. Here is a political party from 10 million trying to get a voters list going with limited resources. It was the biggest challenge we faced. So what we thought was that we would be able to finish with the elections in June. Unfortunately, we are still in the process of holding elections. But finally, we think that within the next 3 weeks, we'll be able to finish the party elections. And we will have the first ever democratic party in Pakistan's history where our members will elect the party office bearers. And secondly, our district members will recommend the candidates. So the candidates won't be nominated by the party chairman. The candidates will be recommended by the district organizations, and that's how we will know who a genuine leadership will emerge in Pakistan, which has never been allowed to emerge before. And of course, in the process, I realized that actually a party chairman can make a lot of money by giving party tickets. Because I didn't realize the sort of money I was offered for people who wanted party tickets. And that's when I realized that one of the reasons why these heads of the political parties are very rich is in awarding tickets. This is one way of making money. But the other problem is only the rich people can come out. It excludes the professionals, the best brains in Pakistan, or the best qualified people who should be sitting in your parliament, who should be making legislation. And that's why our democracy is dysfunctional. Because the sort of people who come into parliament, who pay millions of rupees to the party chairman to get a party ticket, they are not the people who are going to help Pakistan either to get out of the mess. It's all personal interest, what they can get in return. So therefore, we waited. We could actually have raised the tempo in Pakistan. We could have gone into the public and actually made the government dysfunctional on so many issues. Because the government, here is a government which breaks the law, which does not obey the Supreme Court orders, defies the Supreme Court orders, where there is corruption which has broken on limits. The government's Accountability Bureau, the government, appointed by the government, came up with this amazing figure that the annual tax evasion and corruption, it costs Pakistan 4 trillion rupees. Now, if you realize that the total tax collection of Pakistan is 1.7 trillion rupees, Pakistan's expenditure is 3.3 trillion rupees. Just these two heads, tax evasion and corruption, cost the country 4 trillion rupees. And these are the government figures. This organization is not independent, for instance, like the National Audit Commission in Britain, which is an independent institution. This is under the government. In fact, there's a case, it was against the Prime Minister, who has been, the Supreme Court has indicted the Prime Minister in a massive corruption case, and the NAB officer, the officer of this investigating for this Anti-Corruption Bureau, was suddenly found killed. And so this is just 3 days back. So therefore, it is for a government organization to come up with this figure just shows that if you want to fix Pakistan, these are the two things that have to be fixed: collect taxes and curb corruption. Any party who wants to make the country viable has to deal with these, because the figures speak for themselves. 4 trillion rupees. And the total expenditure of Pakistan's total expenditure is 3.3 trillion. So, we would not have to borrow money. But because there was such a huge deficit, Pakistan in 5 years has doubled its debt. So the debt accumulated in 60 years was something like 5 trillion. Just in 5 years, Pakistan has taken it up to almost 12 trillion. So it's because we can't collect revenues, and so therefore this huge deficit. So now I come back. Why? So we could have taken on any issue, we could have gone to the street, but we decided to wait. Then, of course, this phenomena of Dr. Tyrol Qadri, which most of you will be interested in. What is behind it? I'm afraid I'm still guessing as most of you are guessing. But what he showed was that there is such hatred against the government that if one man is willing, if you give a call to march to the capital and pull down the government, people will come with you in the streets. I was being pressurized throughout last summer. We didn't have any electricity in the middle of the summer. We didn't have any gas, and the factories were closing, massive unemployment. So I was under tremendous pressure from my party and the general public to lead a march to Islamabad. But we decided, as I said before, we wanted to put a house in order. First, we wanted to have an elected party, a party that would eventually have 80,000 elected positions. And so we wanted those elected office bearers to then decide or give recommendations who to give party tickets to. So therefore, we thought we weren't ready, so we waited. Meanwhile, Tarul Qadri comes in from nowhere. He leads this march, and it was a massive show. And I cannot tell you how much pressure I was under. I mean, in my 15 years of politics, it was the most pressure I ever felt, where the public was demanding that I should go and join him. He, of course, on the third day invited me to join him. And I can tell you, if we had joined him, there's no way the government would have been able to stop the sea of people in Islamabad. But the problem was, here we were stating that we wanted to remain within the constitution, and we wanted to bring a change through electoral politics. Our fundamental difference with Tarul Qadri was, according to him, you cannot bring a change through electoral politics in Pakistan. The same mafias will come back again. And he felt that the only way was to topple the government through public pressure and ask the assemblies to resign. Now, there was a fundamental difference. One is an extra-constitutional way of doing it, which was his way. We feel that with remaining within the constitution, we can actually bring about a change through the elections. So therefore, we had to resist this pressure. And I'm saying it wasn't easy. But now we have about 6 weeks before the caretaker government comes in. And I think that we will have a 3-month campaign. I think the country's poised. I think you will all, God willing, hear about the biggest ever revolution through the ballot box. In my opinion, it will be bigger than in 1970. What we are trying to achieve is that it should not be the person, the electable, who should be getting the votes. It should be the party ticket who should be getting the votes. This is the fundamental difference what we're trying to do, because we do not want to be a party which is hostage to these electables. Someone would call them feudal politicians, or these traditional political status quo, which comes into politics simply to benefit themselves. And therefore, they all want a piece of the action. We have cabinets in Pakistan which go anything between 60 to 80 cabinet members. I don't know how they manage to hold a meeting. And no wonder they don't hold many cabinet meetings. And the reason why they're cabinet ministers is nothing to do with their competency or anything. It's all to do with patronage. What we want to do is to have people who come into in the parliament on our ticket. So our organizations, our elected organizations, make them win. And this is the same situation what I'm talking about and what I've seen in Britain, where in parliamentary democracy, the party gives a ticket. So the individual might have a personal charisma and add a few thousand votes, but actually it is the party ticket that gets a vote and the party manifesto. So this is a big revolution in Pakistan, and this is a completely different type of politics which we are trying to do. But it is the only way we can get Pakistan out of this mess. Unless you have a political party which has grassroots support, massive public mandate, which then brings in the best people in its cabinet, people who are equipped to deal with the multi-crisis Pakistan faces, and a clean cabinet. So we are the only political party in Pakistan's history. All its senior leadership have disclosed their assets, the amount of tax they pay, and it's been put on a website so anyone can see and challenge them. This has never been done before. So if we have a clean leadership, in my opinion, We then start rebuilding the institution, depoliticizing the bureaucracy, especially depoliticizing the police, which is the only way we can cope with this law and order situation and this proliferation of terrorism, all sorts of terrorism. But one of the urban terrorism, one of the main reasons is that the police force has collapsed in Pakistan by being totally politicized. So having a depoliticized police force, a depoliticized bureaucracy, and then the government corporations that are killing Pakistan today. The government, we say that we spend a lot of money on our army. Every year, the losses in the government corporations are equal to the budget of Pakistan Army. I mean, these dinosaurs, and the only reasons these massive losses take place because they're all politicized. So depoliticize them, and then obviously have a completely new foreign policy. Pakistan really needs peace now. You need to have peace to concentrate on developing our human resources. Money has to be spent on our human beings. We must invest on the young people in Pakistan. 50% of the population in Pakistan is under the age of 25. So if we invest in them, this is our biggest resource. If we don't invest in them, this could actually be the biggest disaster. I mean, we don't need any enemies. This in itself, this mass of uneducated population, no jobs, no skilled workers, this is going to be our biggest challenge. So have education emergency, double the education budget, double the health budget, which will then help us in curbing our massive population growth rate. And as I said, peace with the neighbors, have a completely new relationship with all our neighbors, India especially, and Afghanistan, an evolving situation in Afghanistan. A lot will depend upon now in the next year and a half, the sort of exit the US makes from Afghanistan. This is going to have a big impact in Pakistan. If it's an orderly exit, Pakistan will benefit from it. If it is chaotic, or anything like when the Soviets left Afghanistan in 1989, it could have huge repercussions in the Pashtun belt in Pakistan. So, to sum it all up, I think it's a very exciting time. I'm convinced that the change will come through the ballot box. I'm convinced that for the first time through a very powerful media, even though there's a lot of money flowing in to influence the media, but I still think that a very powerful media has educated Pakistanis. They're more politically aware than ever in our history. I think with this huge young population all wanting change. If you go to universities, colleges, schools, all the young population wants a change. I think this election, although they'll try, the political mafias will try and influence it, but I feel that they will not be able to stop this massive movement for change. And so I see a new Pakistan emerging out of this elections, hopefully which would be around May.
Thank you. We've got enough time for questions and answers. And I'm going to do the first question to Kenneth Roth, because he's got to leave. Kenneth?
Thank you for holding this lunch again. I appreciate it every year. Mr. Khan, I first of all wanted just to say how much I appreciate the stand you took against Mr. Quadri and his effort to upend the constitutional order. It was very important that you took that stand of principle. Your stand against corruption has also been very important. But I want to, if I could, quiz you on your stance with respect to some of the more extreme Islamists. And I want to focus on two things. One, with the Malala killing. I think everybody shares your qualms about the drone attacks. But my understanding of your initial comment when Malala was shot, not killed, but shot, was that it was because of the drones that the Taliban attacked her. Now, the Taliban didn't even say that. Why did you not come out with a firmer position against this act of extremism against girls' education? And second, we've seen many examples of the blasphemy laws being abused by the extremists to suppress religious freedom. Do you recognize those abuses that have been taking place under the blasphemy laws? And if you come to lead Pakistan, will you work to reform the blasphemy laws to try to avoid this kind of abuse? Thank you.
Well, first, let me just make it very clear that I was the first political leader, in fact, the only one who went to the hospital where Malala was kept once she was shot. The only political leader who took the name of TTP and actually condemned them in a press conference. Unfortunately, there is this big propaganda campaign going on that I'm supposed to be pro-Taliban. And this is done deliberately by parties which want to tell the US that they are the moderate and they are the pro-US voices against extremism. And this man is pro-Taliban. So it was very deliberately done. But I'm just giving you the facts. I was the first one to get there, only leader to take the name of TTP and condemn them. But now I come to the bigger picture of extremism in Pakistan, and it's very important for all of you to understand this. Because people, despite me saying this again and again, people do not understand this. Oh yeah, okay. My friend Arif tells me that this is so important that I should stand up and make you. Now, why is Pakistan losing the war against extremism, and why has the US not won the war in Afghanistan against the Taliban? There's one big reason. Two things have come together. One is Pashtun nationalism, which has existed for centuries. This this area has resisted every conqueror in the history since Alexander the Great. Secondly, Islamic radicalism, in the sense they have declared jihad. Now jihad so Islamic radicalism and Pashtun nationalism have come together. A very good article was written by, I think, one of the best US brains dealing with this issue, the former CIA station chief of Kabul called Graham Fuller. He wrote a brilliant article some 5 years back identifying this, that these two things have come together and it is an unwinnable war. What I have been saying throughout, and only reason I have been saying it not because I've got some extra intelligence, only because I'm the only politician who has been throughout the tribal areas. No politician has been there. Not only did I go there because my mother's family tribe comes from Waziristan, and that's why I was invited some 20 years ago, and I did a travel book called The Warrior Race. So I read all the entire history with the British interaction. Before that, the Mughals, who were a superpower. 62 years this area fought the Mughals. 80 years, some part of tribal areas fought the British, who then came up with a very much more intelligent way of dealing with them than, I'm sad to say, that either the Americans or the Pakistanis are dealing with them. They understood the ethos of the tribal mind, of the Pashtun mind, that if they will seek revenge if a near one is killed. So when they used to bomb, the British used to bomb Waziristan in the 30s, we still have leaflets in the museum which says that we are coming to bomb at 4 p.m., so leave your houses. So it would be material damage only. What the biggest mistake the British and the US and Pakistan army made was they started bombing villages. And they created, in Pakistan, we created the Pakistan Taliban through massive collateral damage. I stood up in the parliament and kept telling then General Musharraf that you are making the biggest blunder because these are peaceful people. They are pro-Pakistanis. Use them to isolate the terrorists. Don't push them towards them. Because each house that lost a person, you could rest assured that every family male member would become a potential Taliban. And so it took 2 years of this insanity from 2004 to 2006 to create the Pakistani Taliban. We didn't have any Taliban in Pakistan before. So our local people, unfortunately our own people, our own tribal people became, because it was either Taliban or the US, so they then, anyone who stood up to the Pakistan army, which was considered collaborating with the US, they started calling themselves Taliban. So it took 2 years of this madness to create the Pakistani Taliban. And so I kept saying that isolate them. Isolate the ideologues. There was an ideology you were fighting in Afghanistan and Pakistan. And the reactionary Pashtuns who were joining because of this collateral damage. And unfortunately, there was just this nonsensical thinking going on in Pakistan. And this, rather than this war on terror decreasing extremism, every year the level of extremism started going up. So today the situation is such that here is Imran Khan, I have to think twice. When I make a statement, I have to think twice what will be the reaction of these extremists. I mean, someone who was opposed to this war throughout, I have received threats, for being a liberal. So on one side, I'm called pro-Taliban. On the other side, they're calling me a liberal, and hence un-Islamic. So it's that extreme now. The polarization in the society has grown to a point, and you all remember 2 years back, the governor gets killed in the center of Islamabad. The guards watch, not one guard picks up a gun against the terrorist who pumps in 40 bullets in him and then coolly lays down his gun. And some people treat him as a hero. So that's the sort of polarization. So you have to be very careful what you say. Now to connect the two. How will Pakistan win this war? Pakistan will win this war when we take away the narrative of jihad from the militants. You see, if I can convince a young boy that if you kill a Pakistani soldier who's collaborating with the Americans or a Pakistani police officer, you will go to heavens because it's jihad. I can convince a lot of people in the tribal areas, which is where there are about 800 to 900,000 armed men there. Because all in the tribal area, every man is armed. It's a semi-autonomous area. So, they're suffering from collateral damage. The whole area has been devastated. The army has put checkpoints there. Their businesses have collapsed. They're basically pastoral farmers. Such is the economic devastation there that there's masses of unemployed young boys roaming around, no work. So to convince one of them that, look, the real enemy is the US and Pakistan armies collaborating, and that's where they're producing this unending line of suicide bombers. Now you can do anything, but so far no one has devised a way of stopping the suicide bomber. They have attacked General GHQ. They have attacked Air Force Base in Kamara. They attacked Peshawar Airport recently. They've attacked the Naval Air Base. They've attacked the commando headquarters. They have killed ANP, which is the political party which they blamed for collaborating with the US. They've killed about 250 of the office bearers. In Karachi, where the Taliban, rather than this thing, we winning the war, Karachi is now a part of Karachi is controlled by Taliban. So now how do you win it? Take the narrative of jihad away. How do you take that? By saying, a government comes in and says, look, this is no longer now, we're not fighting US war, this is our war. This is our war, and because it's our war, you can't declare jihad against the Pakistani government. The only reason they've declared jihad is because Pakistan is supposed to be collaborating, taking money from the US. And secondly, they connect Pakistan to the US war is the drones are targeting the same people as the Pakistan army is fighting. So Baitullah Masood was killed fighting the Pakistan army, droned. Naik Mohammed was killed. So all the Ilyas Kashmiri, all the big names who were killed were fighting the Pakistan army and were killed by drones. So the drones have connected Pakistan army to the US war. When the US leaves, of course, this fanaticism will start coming down, which was what Graham Fuller wrote in his article, brilliant article 5 years back. But in the meanwhile, for Pakistan to stop itself from descending into this total frenzy of fanaticism. The more we distance ourselves from the war, the easier it is for us to isolate the real terrorists. And this is my contention. I've been saying this throughout. To win the war, the distance is essential to take the narrative of jihad away. So once it's no longer jihad, you will be able to isolate the sectarian terrorists. Now, there are different types of terrorists in Pakistan. There are ethnic terrorists in Karachi. There are sectarian terrorists who are targeting the Shias. There are unemployed people, criminals who call themselves Taliban. Massive unemployment there are a few, the real ideologues who want some Sharia state based on, through the point of a gun, who want to create Sharia. It's a tiny amount. This is not a very big lot, because when they say Taliban, they want to impose their own Shariat on Pakistan. When Taliban were in power in Afghanistan between 1996 to 2001, there were no Taliban in Pakistan. So there were no takers for the Taliban ideology. So the ideological Taliban is very limited. Generally, it's now a coalition of various militants who now call themselves Taliban, but it has been fueled basically by Pashtun nationalism and the devastation in the tribal area. So if we keep going on like this, it's a never-ending war. Yes, it will start coming down when the US leaves Afghanistan. But can Pakistan take this much longer? I think Pakistan, the whole law and order situation is collapsing in Pakistan. And so the sooner Pakistan can extricate itself from the tribal areas where 140,000 Pakistani soldiers are stuck, the more we will be able to isolate the various terrorist groups, look at their motivations, some truth and reconciliation, others I'm afraid we will have to have targeted operations against them. But at the moment, we've just pushed all of them together, and it's a never-ending war. So Malala's case, the only thing, they did not report everything I said. I condemned the TTP. I said everything. And in the end, I said, we must get out of this war because we're losing the war. And therefore, the only reason I brought the drones is because the drones, and then the Pakistan government says, but it's our war. But the drones link us to the US war. They're targeting the same people. So if my enemy's enemy is my friend, that policy.
Before I ask Edith for next question is, I just want to point out one thing. The person who ordered Malala's hit was Maulana Fazlullah. And by some coincidence, he's given sanctuary in Afghanistan province by the governor of that province, who is directly controlled by Hamid Karzai. And one wonders, okay, what is this circle where a man orders a hit on a woman and who becomes the symbol? And yet people forget that the person who's ordered that hit is sitting in a sanctuary which is controlled by the Afghan president. Edith.
Thank you very much. Edith Lederer from the Associated Press. Mr. Khan, I know they say a day is a long time in politics. A year is certainly a long time. Last year, you predicted that your party will sweep the next national elections and you will become Pakistan's next leader. Does that prediction still hold today? Will you win? Will you sweep the election? And you've talked about the youth as certainly one of your big constituencies. Are there any other constituencies, rural, urban, women, anything else?
Thank you. Last year, I said we'll sweep the elections. This year, I'm even saying it with more confidence that we'll sweep the elections. The reason is very simple. The people who turned out, I don't know whether anyone managed to see those pictures of this mass turnout in Islamabad. The people who turned out, and they interviewed them. We have a very vibrant media, and when the media was interviewing them, everyone was saying that we are sick of these old faces. People want a change, and so it was a, and I'm very proud to say that it was we started this whole movement for change, but it's now spread all over Pakistan. And it will be reflected in the election results. As I say, my difference between me and Dr. Tarul Qadri is he thinks that change can only come through a revolution or extra-constitutional, bringing the parliament down and so on. I actually believe that the elections will bring about a change because I still remember in 1970, Benazir's father, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, taking on the electables, the big feudal politicians. All of them were on one side. Bhutto and the young people of Pakistan were on the other side. And no one predicted it. I mean, no one expected what happened. We all remember what happened. It's going to be a bigger change than that because things were not as bad in 1970 as they are today. In the forefront are the youth. The two sections of population which are always in the forefront are the young people and the women. Women somehow seem to grasp the truth much quicker than the men. It comes a bit later to them. So they are in the forefront. And also why I think that no one can stop this process of change is because the economic situation in Pakistan is going down rapidly. When I was here last time, the rupee was something like 94 rupees to a dollar. It's gone up almost to 100. Now remember, when 1 rupee falls to a dollar, given our foreign debt, 60 billion rupees are added to our national debt. And of course, it raises, everything goes up, so petrol goes up and so on. So things are much worse now than they were last year. And the reason why, of course, we didn't want to join Dr. Tarul Qadri was because we did not want anything to disrupt the electoral process. We want this change to come through the electoral process. And I believe that only with a public mandate, you need a public mandate to bring sweeping reforms in Pakistan. Without public mandate, you can't do that.
Imran, Kate Robertson from One Young World. You know that we were hoping you would join us last year in Pittsburgh, and we really understood why you couldn't. But I wanted to tell you this, to encourage you in your stance on extremism, particularly Islamist extremism, and to talk to your urban base of young people, and indeed your base of women. We had a lot of Pakistani delegates at One Young World, a lot of brilliant young Pakistani leaders, all of whom took to the microphones. And when they were asked by people like Kofi Annan, Ken, Bob Geldof, state your name and your country, they said, "This is my name and I come from the country of Malala Yousafzai."
But can I just say again something I've said about extremism in Pakistan and religious extremism? Look, in every human society, the population is always split. You have liberals on one side, you have the masses always moderate, and then you have on the one lunatic fringe, you have these fanatics. They're everywhere. I mean, let's not make any mistake. Every country has it. The split is almost like that. In extreme situation, you have a swing of sometimes moderate moving towards the extreme temporarily, and then when things go to normal, they come back again. So at one point in the US, 98% of people were for the Iraq war. And look, as they began to see things, people actually again moved away from it. So natural human instinct is not this fanaticism and aggression. People everywhere in the world want the same sort of things. So, in India you have extremists. I've just heard about some saffron extremism come out. In Pakistan we have our lunatics. You have the racist in Europe. I mean, on color of your skin, they want you to be kicked out of a country. So you have everywhere. But now, how do you control this? Let me just say that the best way is democracy. Why is democracy the best way? Because when people vote, when people through elections have an assembly, and you manage to pull these extremists into the National Assembly, into the parliament, you always moderate them. I sat in the Pakistan parliament in 2002. Never were there so many representatives of the religious parties in our history than in 2002. And the reason was, the moment the US bombed Afghanistan, all the Pashtun belt voted for the MMA, which was a religious party coalition, simply because they were speaking out against the US bombing. Others weren't. And so the Pashtun en masse, Taliban ceased to be Taliban, they became Pashtuns, and so the whole Pashtun voted for the religious parties. There were 50 parliamentarians from the religious parties sitting there. And over a period of time, I saw them all moving towards the center. They came up with they used to, in the beginning, extreme views. They would be debated. People would take them on, and they moved towards the center. When BJP came into power, we in Pakistan got petrified. That here's an extreme that had some extreme elements in that. RSS we were scared of. That what will they do? Will they wage war against Pakistan? And yet it was the same BJP which started the peace process with Pakistan. Prime Minister Vajpayee turned up for Lahore talks. So therefore, it's a very important thing to deal with. Never deal with religious extremism with guns. This is the first way of driving them towards militant extremism. The only way to deal with them is through intellect. The man who fought Islamic fundamentalism most of all was my great, I thought, one of the greatest Islamic brains, the great Muhammad Iqbal. Iqbal was the genius, an Islamic scholar, but a scholar in every way. He hit the fundamentalists more than anyone could have done through guns. So to deal with religious extremism is not the way we are, unfortunately, in Pakistan, we deal with them. All we do is they become martyrs, their numbers grow. When you say that, oh, so-and-so is this extremist and this lynching crowd mentality comes in, there's been a lot of extrajudicial killing in Pakistan. People have been murdered who are considered religious fanatics, but they get replaced. Why do I think that drones is one of the most moronic policies anyone could come up with? Because all they do is they create hatred, the people who get killed become martyrs, and they're quickly replaced. I mean, if the drone warfare was so effective, we should be winning the war. But we are not. Neither are we winning it in Pakistan, neither is the US winning in Afghanistan. So I do not believe that military is the way of dealing with religious extremism.
Two more short questions, please. We could time this thing. Somebody at the back, because you haven't been given it. Is there a mic? Please give that mic over at the back, please.
Imran, you painted a pretty...
Please identify yourself.
Yeah, my name is Shaji Farooq. And you painted a pretty bleak picture about what's happening in Pakistan. My simple question to you is, why are you confident of surviving? I mean, really surviving.
Why am I... bleak picture? It's not as bad as it looks. It's much worse. Why do I think I'll survive? Because I think that in Pakistan, well, I mean, who knows how long you're going to survive anyway? No one knows how long they're going to live. But I believe that in Pakistan, the movement for change is so powerful now that anyone who's going to try and stop it, even by trying to go for someone like me, I do not think that they will be able to cope with the repercussions. Because in Pakistan right now, the young population, and I'm saying this now in front of you, whenever I want, I am in a position right now with a political party, a membership of 10 million people. 7 million who we can now, in this modern, thanks to technology, in a matter of minutes, we can send them a text and mobilize these people. So we have the sort of street power no one has ever had in Pakistan. And it's quite scary for people who come into politics to make money and then protect that money. They would not want anything to jeopardize it. That's my protection.
Sanya?
Thank you. I think in any discussion on Pakistan today, there has to be a distinction between the state and the society, because the state is deeply troubled. But from the way that I see it, many of the institutionalized problems, such as corruption or dynastic politics or issues with political party finance and state capture, are not exclusive to Pakistan. They're developing country problems, and our Indian colleagues will tell us that it's very much a South Asia problem. But on the other hand, the society is very vibrant. You yourself talk about the appetite there is for change, the resilience, the manner in which people survive in the face of such great odds. So I think when we make that distinction, we have to be very mindful of the difference between the state and the society and the potential that it creates for change. So I don't think we should adjourn on a very negative note.
No. Sanya, I thought I was being very positive. I don't know why everyone thinks I'm negative. The state and the society. Let me just give you an example. I mean, I don't know how many countries would have survived. First, the earthquake, total devastation, 70,000 people buried. And I remember, I'm giving you the positive side. So my party all started calling me up and saying, the government was hiding the number of people killed. So the Prime Minister comes on television and says, about 1,000 people affected. So I thought 1,000 people affected. I sort of start doing my own work. And then I started getting calls from the area that there are thousands of people buried under the houses and so on. So anyway, I went over, and this is what I saw. There's a town called Balakot, which just got completely, everyone got buried in it. So I went, and so we took our stuff and sort of we rushed there. There was a 3-mile queue. As we entered the place, there was a 3-mile roadblock, and I saw people sitting in a little mini car. His whole car was stuffed with material, food stuff, whatever. People ran to the area. Anyone, the moment people heard, and there were traffic jams there. And not the government, the people of Pakistan. Then, of course, came the flood. At one point, 1/3 of Pakistan was underwater. And people thought the country is gone. How will we ever recover from it? The government completely paralyzed. Every and any Pakistani I knew, whether they were outside, whether they were in Pakistan, everyone helped. How we got out of that crisis, the floods, I think it was the most remarkable thing that happened. The donor agencies stopped giving us. International agencies did not want to give us aid because they did not like the credentials of our president. But people of Pakistan, wherever they were, the sort of money came in and the individual heroic efforts. And of course, finally, let me just say about the cancer hospital, which I started. I built this hospital by going out in the streets collecting money. A first specialized cancer hospital in Pakistan. I ran out of, so I needed $4 million to collect, finally to open the hospital after running everywhere, doing charity shows, Parmesh participating in them, and so many other people, one or two other people, and of course, not to forget Mr. Arif Naqvi, one of the biggest donors. But I mean, they all got sick of me. Arif couldn't bear my face. I mean, each time I would come to ask him for money, he would sort of tell his secretary that, look, I'll call him, tell him not to call me. So I went into the streets of Pakistan. So there were $4 million I needed to collect. I have sat in this van, open box, did 29 cities in 3 weeks. Started from the north, went all the way to the south. And by the end of these 6 weeks, I had collected $5 million. We built the hospital, I'm saying in rupees now, 700 million rupees we built the hospital. Today, for treating 70% of the cancer patients free, it's the only private cancer hospital, treats 70% of cancer patients free. The annual deficit is 2.5 billion rupees annually. Hospital which was built for 700 million rupees, the deficit of treating cancer patients free is 2.5 billion rupees, all by individual donors. So a country that gives the least amount of tax, we are the lowest tax GDP ratio in the world, Pakistanis are the highest giver per capita givers of charity. So so if we can convert, a state can give confidence to its people that yes, your taxes will be spent on you, and of course, like in Britain, for instance, the amount the government goes to tell the taxpayer that their taxes won't be squandered, any little thing and there's an uproar. I mean, we hear corruption in Britain. What happened when we hear about the corruption cases? £400 were spent by their MP on some expenses, and there's an uproar. In Pakistan, every day you pick up the paper, 80 billion rupees disappear somewhere and someone has run off and so on. I mean, so if we can give them confidence, a government they can trust, a government that gives people the confidence that their taxes will be spent on them, I reckon we will be able to collect much more than 4 trillion rupees of taxes. So we don't have to beg and borrow for our existence. We can then start doing what is the most important, spending money on our human beings, investing in our human capital.
Thank you. We'd like to carry on, but unfortunately, we have run out of time, and we cannot, we've got to give the room away. I'm, like you, an incurable optimist. I have to be. I have a vested interest also now that my grandson was born yesterday. And I feel that, like Sania talked about, and you have said so, and we tend to run down ourselves quite a bit. We have a country that can stand 9 simultaneous crises simultaneously has got great resilience. And that country must go.
No. I must add the biggest crisis I didn't mention. No country could have survived 5 years of Asif Zardari as president.
Well, the other thing I'd like to mention here, you mentioned the earthquake, and I'd like to mention something about the Taliban during the earthquake and the floods. We were helped because if the American Chinooks had not come in, a lot of people would have died above the snow level. A lot of people would have died in because they were marooned. But 30% of the time that they flew, the 12,000 sorties were in Taliban-infested areas. And not a single shot was fired. Isn't that a remarkable coincidence? 30%, 4,000 sorties were flown into areas where were Taliban-infested, and not a single shot was fired. And those Chinooks probably saved more than 200,000 lives. So thank God for small mercies. Thank you, Imran. Thank you, everybody. I'm very grateful.